In this lesson, we're going to learn how to factor quadratic trinomials with a leading coefficient greater than 1. So in the previous lesson, we practiced things like factoring x squared plus 7x plus 12. And we found the two factors of 12 that added up to 7, and we wrote the two binomial factors like this. Well, today we're going to learn what to do if there is a coefficient in front of x squared that is not a GCF. How do we factor to get these two binomial factors? So I'm going to teach you a shortcut called slide and divide. When I learned how to do this, we did trial and error. And you can absolutely do trial and error and just keep going till you find the ones that work. But this uses the same kind of strategy that we practiced with yesterday's lesson, but takes into account that there's that leading coefficient in the front. So the first step is to multiply the leading coefficient A times the constant C. Multiply A times C. So that'll be take this leading coefficient and multiply it times the constant at the end of the equation, or at the end of the expression, excuse me. So 2 times negative 18 is negative 36. So negative 36 is actually the number that we're going to use for our sum and product strategy. We want to find two numbers that have a product or multiply to give us 36. So we want a product of 36, and we're still going to be looking at the b value for the sum. So we're still looking at negative 9 for the sum. All right, so then I'm going to go through my list of factors of 36. 1 times 36, I've got a negative, so one of these two factors has to be negative. The bigger one needs to be negative to get me a negative sum on this side, but 1 minus 36 is negative 35, so then I'd move on to 2. 2 times negative 18 is 36, but 2 minus 18 is negative 16. Then I'll move on to 3. 3 times negative 12 is negative 36, and 3 minus 12 is negative 9. So these are the two factors that work with my sum and product pattern. So now I'm going to do just like we did in the previous lesson, and I'm going to split into two binomial factors. I've got x times x, but notice that doesn't get me the 2 at the front. So we'll revisit that in just a minute. So I'm going to put my x plus 3 and my x minus 12 here. Now, if I stopped here, this would be just like what we did in the previous lesson. However, if I went to FOIL this back out and check my work, x times x does not give me 2x squared. So I'm not done yet. I found the two factors of a, c that has a sum equal to b, and I set up my two binomial factors, and now I have to divide. So if you slide, which that's this step, slide, then you must divide. So after you set up your two binomial factors, you divide each of these numbers by the leading coefficient. So we're going to divide by 2. Now, do not get tempted to make it a decimal. You're not going to divide it in your calculator. If the numbers divide evenly, like 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. So I'm going to simplify that factor to x minus 6. If the fraction does not simplify and they cannot divide evenly, you bring the denominator, which doesn't have a home inside the parentheses right now, up into the front and make it your coefficient of your x. So this factor will be 2x plus 3. Now if I go to check my work, 2x times x gives me 2x squared. For the outer term and the inner term, the outer term is negative 12x and the inner term is 3x. Negative 12x and positive 3x add up to negative 9x. And then finally, 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. So these are the factors of 2x squared minus 9x minus 18. And that's how you slide and divide. Let's try another one. On this next one, we're going to multiply 8 times 7, and that's the slide step. All right, so 8 times 7 is 56, and that's our product number, and we're looking for two things that multiply to 56 and add up to negative 30. So here we've got a positive product, so I know I have to have the same sign for both, either two negatives or two positives. In order for them to add up to a negative, it's got to be two negatives. So if I go with 1 and 56 and I make them both negative, those will add up to negative 57, so that doesn't work. And then I'll move on to 2. Again, if you don't know the factors of 56, just pick up your calculator and do 56 divided by 2 and see if it goes in evenly. So 2 times 28 is 56. So 2 times 28 and then negative 2 and negative 28 is negative 30. So that's the pair I'm looking for. So I'm going to set up my two binomial factors, x minus 2 and x minus 28. All right, so I did the slide. I can see right here, x times x is for sure not going to give me 8x squared. So now I'm going to divide. Now this one's a little more complicated because these fractions can simplify. And we have to simplify them before we bring that denominator into its home, okay? So 2 over 8 simplifies to 1/4. So I've got x minus 1/4 here. And 28 over 8, both of those could divide by 4 evenly. So I'm going to divide numerator and denominator by 4, and that's going to give me x minus 7/2. Now I'll take each of those denominators and give them a home in front of the x. So that gives me 4x minus 1 and 2x minus 7. And then I'm just going to double check and make sure my answer is reasonable. Again, 4x times 2x is 8x squared. The outer, I get negative 28 and positive 2, which that's where I got these factors from in the first place. And then negative 1 times negative 7 is positive 7. So that's my factors of 8x squared minus 30x plus 7. For example C, we're going to do the same thing. We'll multiply 6 times negative 4, which gives us negative 24. So we're looking for two factors of negative 24 that add up to negative 5. So if this is a negative product, I'm going to have to multiply a positive times a negative. And if the result is a negative number, then the bigger of these two factors is going to be negative when I list them. So I'll start with 1 times 24, and the bigger factor needs to be negative, so the smaller one is positive. 1 minus 24 is negative 23, so that's not it. Then I'll move on to 2 and 12, and I'll make the bigger one negative. 2 minus 12 is negative 10, so that's not going to work either. So I'll move on to 3. 3 times negative 8 is negative 24, and 3 minus 8 is negative 5. So those are the factors that will give us negative 24 when we multiply them, and they will give us the correct sum of negative 5. So x plus 3 and x minus 8 will be our two binomial factors. And so if you slide, you must divide. So now we're ready to divide by 6. All right, so 3 over 6 simplifies to 1/2. But we can't leave fractions in our factors. So we'll have to bring this 2 to the front and make that 2x plus 1. 8 over 6, I can divide both of these by 2, and it gives me 4/3. X minus 4/3. So then we can't keep this fraction in here either. We got to bring this 3 inside and give it a home. 3x minus 4. Now again, some of you can do this without making the table. You could just 6 times negative 4, you could do it in your head and figure out the two factors and put them into the parentheses. You could also probably simplify this in your head to 4/3 and go ahead and skip all the way down to here, 3x minus 4. The more problems you practice, the better you'll get. All right, example D, we're going to do the same thing. Again, I do want to remind you that at the beginning of the problem, if you saw that there was a greatest common factor here, and you could bring out a common factor, then you might not have to do slide and divide, and it would be more desirable to bring out a common factor than it would to slide and divide. Slide divide will not work correctly if there's a common factor in the problem. So step one is still always to look for a GCF, but this one does not have a greatest common factor, so we are going to do the same process. So 3 times 32 is 96, so I'm looking for factors of 96 that add up to negative 20. Again, this is positive, so I have to have two factors with the same sign, and they're going to have to both be negative in order to give me negative 20. So here I go, 1 times 96, and they both have to be negative, because negative times negative is positive, but that adds up to negative 97, so that's not it. So then we'd move on to 2 and divide 96 by 2, and 96 divided by 2 is 48. So I add those together and I get negative 50. That's not it either. So then I would move on to 3. 3 times negative 32 is 96, and negative 3 and negative 32 add up to negative 35. So that's not it either. 4 goes into 96 24 times. So make both of those negative, and that gives you a sum of negative 28. So we're still not there, but notice this. I'm trying to get to negative 20, and this sum number is approaching, and we haven't passed it yet. So we haven't missed anything. We're on the right track. 5 does not go evenly into 96, so then we'll divide by 6. And again, just testing them all out to see what works. Negative 6 and negative 16 is negative 22. So I still haven't passed it. I'm getting closer. 7 does not go evenly into 96, so we'll go with 8. And 8 times 12 is 96. So negative 8 times negative 12 is also positive 96, and those add up to negative 20. So this is one of those times where the product number you're looking for is a composite number with a lot of different factors. Making this list in order is helpful if you're struggling to come up with the two factors, okay? If you can guess them quickly, no big deal. If it's obvious that it's not 1 and 96, you don't have to list all of these. But if you're struggling to get to it, then it might help save you some time in the long run if you just go ahead and list them out in order. So now I'm going to make my two factors, x minus 8 and x minus 12. Whoops, I got a glitch. I can't stop here like I did yesterday because I need a 3 at the front. We can't just stick a 3 in there. If we slide, we must divide. So we're going to divide by 3 on both of these. 8 over 3, the fraction does not simplify, so we'll bring that 3 to the front. Oops, make it 3x minus 8. Notice each time I'm bringing the bottom number to the front. The top number in that fraction already has a home inside the parentheses, so I'm wanting to bring the bottom number inside as well. Here, 12 divided by 3 is 4, so that gives me x minus 4. Then I'm going to double check to make sure that my answer makes sense. 3x times x is 3x squared. Outside I got negative 12, and inside I got negative 8, which that was what I was expecting. And that does add up to negative 20. That's how I got those numbers in the first place. And then negative 8 times negative 4 is positive 32. This is one of those things that seems really tedious when you first get started. And the more problems you practice, the better you will get and the quicker you'll be able to find those factors and maybe even start skipping some steps in the process. Just make sure you pay attention closely to the important details, and the best thing you can do is check your answer at the end to make sure that it gives you your original expression. Good luck.